Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by CoolSomething.com, mana traders, as well as Twitch subs and Patreon supporters just like you. My name is Evan Irwin. Get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Power Dragon.
What's up, everybody? I'm still out here just trying to make my way through Thunder Junction because, man, there's a lot to explore still.
The set's dope. Ruben Bressler.
I mean, I'm still trying to... I thought you were going to say I'm still trying to survive, but also that. But yeah, Thunder Junction is the Wild West out there. There's a lot going on.
Thunder Junction, at least officially, and at least in the past couple years, I've had more 0-3 drafts that I was so confident I could, you can squeeze one win, even out of like some Garbo something, and even when like the MMR is in your favor, after you lose 2 matches in a row, your third match arguably is often a lot of times a hell of a lot easier than those first 2, just because of the way the ranking system works. Doesn't matter. I've just been getting my clock cleaned every which way.
I mean, it's tough when every deck has 8 rares in
it. That's true.
And so much removal. Everything has so much removal, and it's so good, it's so efficient, and it's a lot. And you want to hear us talk more about it on the pre-show if you would like. We start with our first pick in our code push. Visit CoolStuffInc.com and use promo code MagicMics to support this show. If you want us to hang around, chit-chat about the Magic cards, please go to CoolStuffInc.com, use the promo code MagicMics, get 5% off anything you want in the store, and even if your customer rewards are over that, you can still use that promo code to help us out and show your support for the show. We appreciate each and every one of you who have already done that, and thanks to our sponsor, Cool Stuff Inc., for sponsoring where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. Note before we begin, we are going to tease our favorite Magic memory near the end of the show, thanks to Maximilian for sponsoring that question, as it were. Which we appreciate. It's a cool question. Should be fun. All right. So for the first pick, and this is something that surprised Ruben, and honestly kind of surprised myself. This came out today. I wasn't expecting to talk about this honestly at all. This announcement came out, not yesterday, but or not today, but yesterday, apparently last night at 10 o'clock. Okay, whatever. Anyway, over the past day or so, the SCG Las Vegas details were posted. And at this point, the SCG events, they run tournaments for all sorts of stuff, all sorts of formats, Flesh and Blood, Lorcana, and yada, yada, yada. And there's no question that the biggest event should almost always be, sort of by default, Modern or Pioneer, or, some big constructed format that like always brings the people out. My God, the biggest event at this show is a cEDH $8,000 tournament. The only thing closer is a sealed MH3 pre-release RCQ and a 5K Pioneer RCQ and a Modern RCQ. The biggest event is cEDH. Ladies and gentlemen, listen. I've been making content for almost 20 years. All right, I've watched Magic do things up, down, left, right, go hardcore and competitive and hardcore non-competitive. I've seen Commander take over this game, and now Commander is taking over the competitive part of this game. This is huge. This is real. These numbers don't come out of anywhere. The cEDH side event got bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where it needed to be a main event, and it's just getting so real. And when you think about it, what's happened over the past 12-ish years or so, as Wizards has pushed Commander more and more and more, most of your Magic content that you see is Commander focused or Commander based or touches on Commander or shows Commander gameplay. So you would imagine that those who want to get better at Magic, well, they're already playing Commander. So what are they going to do? They're going to play Commander competitively. And that brings you to where we are with cEDH. And I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world to imagine that there will be a pro-level cEDH event in the next 5 years. Something that will get you on the Pro Tour or something, because this format has steam. This format is literally based off the most popular way to play right now. And for it to be the biggest tournament at a Magic event, I'm trying to just fully frame this and saying that this is ginormous. cEDH has taken over every other constructed format to be the number one highlighted format at an event. It's wild. It's crazy.
I don't know. Like, I guess the way I've always seen it, I say always, for the last probably half decade at least, it's just been that people play Commander are still kind of unified under one umbrella, where people playing other 60 card formats are still very largely split. because we have people playing everything from Pauper all the way up to Legacy pretty regularly.
Mhm.
So it's a little harder, I think, to gather everybody to do one big event for Pioneer or Legacy or Modern or whatever than it used to be. Whereas now it's like you can do a big thing for Commander, and it's like that's kind of their only real opportunity. So it's like, let's get them together. And, SCG is doing stuff on the West Coast again, going out to Las Vegas. And there's a huge competitive Commander contingent in California. They've been running some big competitive EDH events out there for a minute. So I'd imagine a big chunk of that audience is also going to make it down to Vegas, because that's only, for a lot of them, if you're in SoCal, that's between a 2.5 to 4.5 hour drive, depending on where you're at. So totally reasonable for a lot of people to make that trip. So yeah, that's probably going to go over really well.
Ruben, have I convinced you of its enormity?
No.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll red zone this. I don't buy it. I don't think that this was first pick worthy.
Why?
Like, I understand that we should talk about this. It is noteworthy that the largest event being held by one of, if not the largest event runners, is this format.
That's the story. That's the thing.
That's not the biggest news of the week. I'm not terribly excited by, like, this does not make me personally jump out of my chair. I think it's very cool. I think that also, I mean, not for nothing, a Lorcana 5K is more exciting to me.
Well, Lorcana being on the same level as Modern, right? Modern and like
having a Lorcana event be the same as the RCQs, right, to me is also equally big news. Being an SCG event of all things. I think that this speaks more to the sort of decline in live events overall since we started this show, personally. Like, this isn't even a 10K. Like, we're not even, like, what are we doing here? So this is a cool event. It's very neat, and it's a bunch of games. We've got Flesh and Blood, we've got Magic, we've got Lorcana. It's in Vegas. SCG puts on a good show.
Star Wars, yeah,
all that stuff. And there's going to be like a Commander celebration, whatever that entails. And I think that that's very cool. I just don't know that this is earth-shattering in the way that you framed it.
It's never taken, this format has never taken over as the largest event. Because you know what cEDH does? And you mentioned it. cEDH puts butts in seats. And that's what all the organizers want, is butts in seats. And cEDH people show up. And cEDH people play at the big events. And they play in all the events that you give them. And that's just huge. And the fact that competitive Commander is the tent pole. It's the biggest thing that's going on all weekend. That blows my mind. I can't, when you've lived in a world where it's not even close. You know what I mean? Like, cEDH, if anything, was just kind of weird and kind of hung out in the background. It was when COVID hit, it was like this. There was a way to play if you really wanted to. Had 1v1 or whatever with webcams, but but it didn't get a lot of traction. But over time, as we've seen with a lot of sort of these fan-based formats, if you just keep at it and you just continue down that road or whatever, it gets bigger and bigger, and here we are.
Yeah, but I think some of them turn up too, because how many opportunities do you have to play fair, competitive Commander, right? You can sort of play on the webcam and, work your way through it and trust everybody's going to not cheat or whatever. But like,
Magic Online just released, I think, the first cEDH leagues, and
we'll see how those go in the long run. But I equate that to the same thing of like Eternal Weekend, right? Everybody makes fun because it's the one big weekend, so everybody turns up and they do all the things. And so it kind of feels that way to me as well. It's just like these are rare opportunities, so let's go do them.
If you own a store and you are not trying out cEDH events right now, you're making a mistake. You should at the very least open up that door, see if it brings the butts in your seats. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's to the point where it's to that level where you need to see if it's right for your people, because the audience.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think if you know your customer base on their level or their hunger for competition or not,
right?
I think if they have it, go ahead and run it. If not, keep doing what you're doing. Just Commander's going to be what it is, but you got to have the right people for it.
It's super cash, for a lot, and some it's not. I'm just, again, this was like when this happened. I never thought a day where I would say a competitive commander, again, not just any commander, competitive commander is the big one.
This week, certainly. I mean, Commander's been the biggest for years and years and years at this point. I suppose that because it's SCG, a competitive bent website, it has been the whole time, for the most part. I mean, certainly not as much as Channel Fireball was at its peak. But the writers for Channel Fireball and the content creators for Channel Fireball were more competitive than casual for most of their existence. And the events certainly are that way. And so I suppose it is a bellwether that the SCG, the elephant of the archetype of these competitive events, has moved to having a competitive EDH tournament be the overall number one event of the weekend.
But that's the only way to do organized Commander for prizes.
Sure.
I mean, it's literally it. You can't do casual for prizes.
Agreed.
It's just and even being on,
and you shouldn't.
No, it's not going to work.
In Chicago, multiple people came up to us on the Commander committee to just like, oh, well, y'all should make a thing for this and y'all should make a document for that. And we're like, no, like we can't. Like there is nothing we can say or do that will get you what you want as a casual player. Like you either play casually or you play competitively. Right? You can't, once you start introducing prizes and structure and whatever, like you've already abandoned everything in that casual realm.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Everything. This comes up to that conversation a couple months ago, or about a month and a half ago, where they were going off on the guy because he lied on his actions during a game of or tournament of Commander. Right? It's like, this isn't a casual game. You're playing for prizes. Of course I'm going to do whatever I can to get the edge. We're playing for like $1,000 or whatever. As long as I'm not lying about the game state or anything, great. Yeah. I can tell you, hey, if you target that, I'm going to do this other thing just to get you to get rid of a card. Well, it sucks to be you. I mean, like, now in a casual game, would I do that? Probably not, because that's just, being mean for no reason. But in a competitive game,
I mean, we'll see how it goes. Obviously, and again, I expect it to do well because every cEDH thing, every cEDH thing that's happened is done ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like breaking numbers. They had no idea there were this many people and yada yada. Like we've heard that like 3 or 4 times now to the point where we see this. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's move on out of here, out of the first pick to gather the townsfolk. Thanks to our sponsor, Mana Traders. The best tool to enhance that Magic Online experience. Use the code MAGICMikes_8N4 for 10% off your next subscription with Mana Traders. Tell them we sent you. We appreciate their support. So one of the cool things that happened, and could arguably have been the first pick this week, and I can certainly concede that. But it was super awesome in that they announced a collaboration with Cowboy Bebop. And I hope you haven't seen the Netflix show and have instead seen the anime, because the anime is great.
I heard that the Netflix show was fine and got undue hate for whatever reason.
Did it, though?
So, whatever. I don't know. I didn't see it. I'm not going to defend a thing I haven't seen.
It's fine. Either way, they showed up here, and there's various cards that you can get at your local WPN store starting on August 2nd by playing in weekly standard showdown events. There's 5 special promo cards. They'll be distributed 1 week each throughout August, September, November, and February, as well as April through May next year. So we're going all the way into 2025 for this stuff. There's a couple cool things about it. One is that this doesn't actually feature the Cowboy Bebop characters. This is the Magic characters in the Cowboy Bebop world and the Cowboy Bebop style. But, so you have Tiny Bones here on Ossification, and there's Jace in his super cool hat and Disdainful Stroke. One of the things that people were noting that, Go for the Throat, Lightning Strike, and Snakeskin Veil are all cool, great cards, super rad, not worth the most amount of money ever.
Sure.
I think they tried to cut like sort of the line between they're going to be a little expensive because they're promo versions that are hard to get, but they're not the greatest cards of all time that demand $40-$50. These aren't like Shouldreds. I mean, no. These aren't Final Showdowns.
These are F&M foils, effectively.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
But awesome. I think the collab is fantastic. If you get time, they did a whole Cowboy Bebop / Magic trailer that they produced, and it looks absolutely amazing and has some of that awesome music that Cowboy Bebop is known for, that super cool kind of jazz fusion thing that's going on. And I just love it. As a big fan of Cowboy Bebop, I think this is great, and it's a great way to get people to go in stores.
I mean, I've liked Cowboy Bebop soundtrack. Like, I thought the anime was just like, all right. I don't think I finished it. It just wasn't my jam, but that's all right.
Right. Yeah.
My bigger issue with this is I want to be excited about it. Of just like, hey, here's a cool thing. I know Cowboy Bebop has a big fan base, a little bit resurgence because of the Netflix show or whatever. But my issue is, why the dates? You know, like, we're going to be so far removed from Thunder Junction, from the date of the promotion and the cool preview video and all that. Like, the only thing I can figure, and this is just me making an assumption, is that there wasn't an initial plan to do it, but then they realized how popular it's going to be, and then they're going to go ahead and print the cards.
Well, because this came out, right? We originally found this out for the Japanese market, and I was like, oh man, the Japanese market gets this really cool bunch of foils and promos or whatever. I wish we could get those. And then like the next day they debuted this plan, and I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. But also at the same time, in April, literally a year from now, are we even going to remember this is happening? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because the first one is until what, August?
So until August, yeah. 4 months.
But that timeline kind of makes sense. If you say, okay, we got to put them in the schedule, we got to print them, then we got to give 3 weeks to a month to ship them and get them to retail stores and whatever. Like,
right.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's possible this was just a last minute addition of just like, hey, let's do something cool for the standard showdown stuff. Upside, it'll be right around the time of rotation.
Right.
So like, maybe, maybe that's a reason for people to be a little excited and turn up. We'll see. But, I'm not going to poo-poo it. We'll see how people respond to it. They might be really excited, just have some sweet Cowboy Bebop inspired stuff.
Right. For those who haven't seen Cowboy Bebop and are terrified, oh no, it's an anime. There's 1,000 episodes. No, it's not. There's like 20 episodes.
Yeah,
Cowboy Bebop
was
is
it
like
more than a season?
No, it was a season. It was 20 episodes and one movie. Yeah. So if you want a good entry level classic, highly recommended by critics and audiences alike, Cowboy Bebop is a good entry level gateway anime.
Algo Tarani notes on Twitch that the disdainful stroke is probably Oko, and I think they're correct there.
Oh yeah,
that was on me. But yeah, this is again like it's kind of weird that a year from now, when we're in the middle of probably geeking out over Marvel everything, Snakeskin Veil is going to show up as a Cowboy Bebop promo, and we're like,
yeah, a little strange.
Also weird because
I don't love the timing.
They're also all fairly playable except for Snakeskin Veils, like the least exciting of them. So it's like, didn't really get one on the level, but it's all right.
They needed a green common or uncommon that was standard playable that wasn't a creature, I guess.
Okay, right. They're all spells, except the ossification of which is an aura.
But see, I would have been okay with it being green, and the green one's the one that's the creature.
Sure, same.
Like that just makes sense, right? Just make the green one the creature if it means you get a better card on the same level of like go for the throat or
they wanted to feature one of the main characters. They wanted to feature Vraska. So like I sort of get it, but still.
At the same time, I think we can both recognize the limitations it feels like they were under.
Yeah.
While also noting that but we still get it, right? We still on the American market get it. And that's awesome. Thank you, Wizards, for doing that.
For sure.
That could have just been a Japanese market thing, and they just said, look, it's just for the Japanese market,
the other thing is this promotion might end right around the time we get like a month break, and then you can do it again with some Marvel stuff.
Oh
there we go.
They're going to go. They better.
And then they bring back F&M promos, but for standard showcase promos.
I'm down.
Like that's what we get.
Sure. Yeah. Man. Whatever. That would be great. All right. So Hasbro unveiled their earnings report for Q1, and it was very positive. As far as I understand it, the stock has done very well as a result of the reporting. The Magic and Dungeons and Dragons were up 6%, which is huge. Magic the Gathering sales, including digital, grew 4% to $237.9 million versus $229 a year ago. And basically they're crushing it. Their profitability is up. Everything seems to be up. while at the same time they've cut a whole lot of jobs, and cutting a whole lot of jobs is the easiest way to profitability. You run a business, that's how that works.
Yeah.
But they said Magic the Gathering tabletop sales were up about 4%, overall tabletop sales up 5%. So that's all very positive. And Magic the Gathering engagement, one of those magical words about how people interact with it, is largely referring to organized play participation is back at pre-pandemic levels. Chris Cox said, which is great. But yeah, operating profit up 60%. That's 2,000 jobs, man. That's where that comes from.
Yeah. I mean, but there's also, like we talked about, crazy things like Furbies that they noted actually sold, Furblets, I think is
for
what
babies or something. Yeah.
Like something. Those took off, your Monopoly Go doing their $2 billion or whatever. So, the stuff we expected to be down was down, and they had a couple of surprises in the middle of there. So, their stocks went up, I think, like 10 or 11%. So apparently all the other smart guys in the room saw everything and said, all right, that tracks.
Right. Well, Hasbro overall was down a ton for the quarter.
Yeah.
Is worrisome, ultimately. It's tough for me to get excited about these anymore because when there's a loss, we'll get a bump next quarter. And when there's a bump, we'll get a loss next quarter. And the only consistency seems to be mass layoffs in the favor of growth potential. And that's not sustainable. That's not a thing that can continue to happen.
I will say, though, if you read into it, though, they did say that, like, they sold off, like, they're carrying less inventory, they paid down debt, there's all this other stuff that contributed to those numbers as well. But, like we were talking about pre-show, though, I think their problem's going to be when you get past Q3 and you're going to have Assassin's Creed to compare to Lord of the Rings. And that's just not,
Well, I think Modern Horizons 3 is going to carry a lot of the water for that.
It has to. That and Bloomburrow are going to have to do for 2 and 3 are going to have to do all the work.
I think Bloomburrow
there's going to be nothing from Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, I think Assassin's Creed is going to do absolutely garbo.
I find it interesting that digital and licensed game sales were up 14% in quarter one compared to quarter one from last year.
Right.
Does that not count Baldur's Gate?
Baldur's Gate isn't in that yet. Baldur's Gate wasn't released till like quarter three or something.
Yeah, something like it was later in the year.
Oh, is it really that young? It's only 6 months old.
It's not that old.
No, maybe 9 months, something like that. But yeah.
But either way, the Baldur's Gate money, I don't think is in there yet. Otherwise, they would probably be way down comparatively. But again, and this is all just like numbers dudes talking.
They do have a lot of new digital offerings and stuff that they're trying. So that's probably where that comes from.
Right, Monopoly Go has been absolutely destroying it. So
which I still don't understand. But I mean, $2 bill, man.
Whatever.
The gotcha games at this point are down to such an incredible science that you could really just I mean, my God, do they not even teach classes at this point on how to make gotcha games and probably make the best psychology moves or whatever? Either way, Magic looks good, even though it totally sucks they've been cutting jobs. OTJ's been crushing it, which is way better than MKM, which I will take. Wanted to note here.
Yeah, also note that because of the way businesses are smart, the OTJ orders, like we talked about previously, came in mid-March because stuff has to be shipped and be able to be shipped out in April. So the initial OTJ orders did get counted in Q1.
Right. Well, they had to be in the distributor by the end of March. By March 31, that'd be in the buildings. And there have been times in the past where sets you didn't think would be out for many, many months were in distributor warehouses at the end of the year. Let's move on here to an unfortunately sad note from Mark Rosewater. His father, Gene, passed away from Alzheimer's, and he was the source of his love for games. And there's no way, Mark Rosewater says here, I would be doing what I would do now without his influence, which is obviously heartbreaking and horrible to hear. Alzheimer's is a terrible disease. Took my grandmother just a few years ago, and is awful in that way. And I hope Mark Rosewater is doing better, considering his loss.
Yeah,
same. That's always hard.
Yeah, I mean it's rough, but if I can live to be Mark's age and have my parents be alive, I will be happy. But loss at any time is going to be difficult, and particularly from such a cruel disease, that is hard. So our thoughts go out to Mark Rosewater, and thank you to both Rosewaters for the joy that they're both responsible for.
There you go. If it weren't for Gene Rosewater, there wouldn't be Mark Rosewater, and we would be poorer for it.
Right.
All right, let's go ahead and move on here to some desperate ravings where people talk about and rant about various things. And I thought it was interesting that Chris Cox was talking about on that CEO Hasbro earnings call about the Universes Beyond stuff. And they noted that the Universes Beyond Fallout set, which hit retail on March 8th, has been out for 6 weeks or so, is the best performing Commander set ever. Now,
wow.
A, that's huge, first of all.
Yeah.
B, they got an awesome TV show to launch alongside it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And these things work together. And Fallout, the video game sales are absolutely destroying it. And you could clearly see Fallout stuff at your local big boxes, at your local game stores. They're like, oh, I've seen that show. I've heard it's awesome. I like the dog or whatever. You buy the dog deck, right? So like all those things you can see, you can be a part of that universe now.
Yeah, exactly. I think that they tried to do something similar in the past. This is the first time where it's actually come together.
Right. Where
the Fallout show and the Fallout set were released within a month or two of each other. Right. They're going to try to do the same thing with Assassin's Creed. They whiffed a few times previous to this, but maybe they got this one.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think we saw that all the way back with Walking Dead, right? Because it came out during the final season preview. It was their big like campaign of stuff they were doing. I think when Warhammer came out, it was like another book release or edition or something. It was within like a month of that coming out. So like we've kind of done that a couple of times now, and it seems it helps all the projects hit and they all sell very well. So probably keep on keeping on with that.
Yeah, they noted that in 2025, Universes Beyond, the sets are going to be tied to Marvel and Final Fantasy, describing them as, quote, in the same league, at least, as what we saw with Lord of the Rings. And I absolutely believe that. Lord of the Rings brought in all the nerd dollars. Marvel can bring in all of the normie dollars.
Right.
And there are so many normie dollars, y'all. You don't even, when all of a sudden your cousins or your aunts and uncles start to see things like, oh, I saw that Iron Man magic thing. What's up with that? That's
they're going to send me links on Facebook and Instagram DMs.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you like this. Like, my mom knows nothing about comic books, sci-fi, or whatever, other than like the crap I brought into the house. Like she knows nothing. But she's literally called me before and been like, hey, I was watching Doctor Strange and they had this thing on there and they were talking about this. Is this the same thing from like the Spider-Man movie or whatever? I was like, oh yeah, she gets it. They're like, this is all the same thing. And
Yep.
So yeah, there's a lot of people that you wouldn't even think might be interested, could be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And tapping different audiences is the right way to go for Wizards. They're going to have to move outside of the gamer sphere at some point because ultimately gamers play all the games. We've all been over. It might even be your house. It might actually be both of your houses where behind you are dozens of different games, right? I've got a shelf over there that's dozens of different games.
I got dozens of games in the.
If you're a gamer, you game. Maybe you play Magic the most, but you also play Twilight Imperium and Ticket to Ride and Monopoly Go and Dungeons and Dragons and Fallout, et cetera, right? Eventually, you need to cross over into the mainstream and try to get those dollars. We just had one of the funniest sketches in the history of SNL was the Jumanji sketch, which highly focused on Ticket to Ride, which is a game that I don't identify as a normie game, but I guess it is a normal person game, right?
I would say that and Settlers of Catan are probably the two,
right,
what you would call traditional hobby board games that most average board gamers can play.
They can cross over.
Yeah.
Right? And someone notes that, like, Marvel hasn't been too great since Endgame. But you know what also hasn't been too great in a while? Star Wars. And Star Wars Unlimited right now is absolutely crushing it. I'm talking that market over the past couple weeks has went from 1.5 to 2x what they currently were. The boxes are going for $200 to $240, where they were at $100 to start with. All the singles are exploding. Like Star Wars, I thought that set was going to be terrible. I thought that, that product was going to be bad. No one's going to play that because everyone's tired of how Star Wars just sucked at this and this. They didn't like this show and they didn't like how they did so and so. Doesn't matter, man. Those people die hard. Let me tell you, the Marvel people are right there with them. They're going to die hard, man. And those sets are going to crush it.
Not
also because they're not going to be part of the movies.
Well, not just that, but there's a lot of these buyers that aren't players. They just want to collect the cards.
Want the collector.
Yeah, they just want to have a full set. They're big Marvel fans. They're big Disney fans. Like, they just want to pick up whatever's there. Like, they don't care. Hell, Pokemon makes a big chunk of their money from people who have been collecting cards for 20 years and don't know the rules of the game.
Yep. And
that's just the way it is.
One of the things they noted here about Final Fantasy was their projections for sales in Japan are way higher than they would be anywhere else in the world. Because that is like their Lord of the Rings, man. Like Final Fantasy has shaped a lot of Japanese culture in ways that it just hasn't anywhere else. Not to say we don't like the games. I love the games. I played a ton of them. They're awesome, but it ain't in our sort of DNA like it is in a lot of Japanese gamers' DNA.
Right. And there ain't much left. We've got DC Comics, which I think is something we can.
I'm ready for that.
I mean, Nintendo is the last Rubicon. Like that's the final. That's the event horizon.
Nintendo would be huge.
And that's about it, right?
I mean, Animal Crossing Commander decks, y'all.
Right, but that's not as big as Nintendo.
Anything like Brawl.
Nintendo, by the way.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Like that, the Zelda decks or the Mario decks or whatever.
For sure.
It would just be crazy. Like
the Smash Brothers. If they're trying to make the Smash Brothers cinematic universe a thing with Mario and Donkey Kong eventually, then I hope that somewhere down the line we get that.
That would be great. But yeah, ultimately, Universes Beyond was a great idea, and I championed it for many, many years.
I've told people that from the beginning. You want to be mad about it, but at the end of the day, we see tons of new faces coming into the game because of it. Like I've told you before, in Chicago, that was a ton of people's first time going to any type of big Magic thing. And a bunch of them have been playing for less than half a year that I talked to. So it's just like, people are turning up. They're picking up the game, whether old heads like it or not.
Right.
Like, it's good for business, and the numbers show it.
I mean, I begged for years, even when they told me it was never going to happen. Even when Rosewater said many times over the years it was never going to happen. And I'm like, dude, one day.
To be fair, though, I would say old management, it could never happen.
Right. The OG president, they would never in a million
They didn't even like crossing the streams of D&D and Magic. Like, that was literally a thing for a long time. And
that was hell no.
And we can argue, you got to take the good with the bad, right? You got to figure out which would you'd prefer at that point.
Sure. But I will say, the guy that was there before Chris Cox, because he was the guy that was there for about the first 6 or 8 months I was there. Yeah. And he was just starting to come around to the idea, it felt like. Chris Cox came in and was like, yeah, this makes total sense. Why have you not done this? And everybody went, oh, he's going to let us do the thing.
Yeah. Things like collector boosters and things. Like, I mean, all of that stuff, they were like, no, you can't rock the boat. The boat is doing well. Let the boat float or whatever. And it was like, no, man, we need more products, more ideas, different things, different IPs. Make it a game system. Stop making it just our little nerdy pond or whatever.
I still want more merchandise. I want to be able to buy more random things for my desk and for my car or whatever with like Magic and D&D stuff on it. We need to get on that.
We're trying to get there. So we're going to move on here to Going Infinite. A terrific question from one of the viewers. Who asked what was our favorite Magic memory. And I've talked about this before, but my favorite Magic memory was when I went to, after the first Pro Tour I went to, Pro Tour Valencia, and I went to Essen, Germany for the Essen Spiel. And they had the Invitational there. Well, they don't have it anymore, but used to have the Invitational, and you would vote people there, and I won like the storyteller vote, and so I got to go. And there was a whole hubbub because I'm not a pro player, and that was a whole thing. And Gerard Fabiano was way better at Magic than I were and could tell a way better story. But what's this dork on YouTube doing? Anyway, so I was there, and I was filming stuff, and I filmed all the Pro Tour Valencia stuff. And after, generally how it works is the Magic show came out once a week. So the Pro Tour Valencia happened the week before, or the weekend before. And so the next episode on that Friday was about the Pro Tour. So that was debuting, and I didn't get out of my hotel as quickly as other people. I basically came to the booth a little bit late. And when I got to the booth, it was completely deserted. And the way that these things work in these giant halls is you get sort of enclosed spaces that you can keep all of your stuff and keep your inventory. You can lock it up at night and whatever. And every single person at the Invitational who was at the show was packed into that little space all around a single laptop that were all watching the Magic show for the first time that morning.
Wow.
And just to come out and like, Aaron Forsyth and Rosewater and, and everyone, like, and every single competitor that was there. And I was just like, because I was busting my ass on it. I worked on it until like the wee hours of the morning. That's part of why I was there so late.
Right.
And to finally publish it, and then to get there and they're all watching it and like, oh man, I'm telling you,
great,
dude, the feels were just incredible. And I loved it. And I don't think anything can beat that. So.
That's a great story. I love it. You got one?
Power Dragon Ruby.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, also, for people who don't know, Eschenspiel is like the German equivalent of Gen Con.
It's
like
the largest gaming event
yeah.
in the world. Yes.
It's pretty wild. For me, it's probably, man, I don't know. I probably have like 50. Now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I was about to say something. Oh, but that's a good one. That's a good one. But there was a moment, I don't even know if people remember this, back in Texas, Event Horizons was the one of the big organizers at the time. And they did this really cool thing where they wanted to acknowledge players from the region because they ran basically all events for like Louisiana, Texas, and I think Arkansas and Oklahoma at one point. And, you had people who showed up regularly, kind of all your end bosses that would be at all the PTQs or whatever. And they ran an invitational, basically, kind of how like Wizards does it. If you finish so often or like, and they had so many, like you finish well in like standard stuff, you finish well in limited stuff or whatever. And then they had a couple of made up formats. You got to show up and play for the weekend, which was pretty cool. And you got to make a card that you could use in one of them, but you didn't know what the format was going to be yet. So you had to design a card that wasn't like too linear, but also not too busted or whatever, that you could play in this weird format. So that was kind of fun. And for me, it was cool just being part of that to like be acknowledged, I guess, because it was like, okay, people knew I was running a store and this, that, and the other. And like, I'd written some things at the time, but it was like, oh yeah, I'm actually not trash as a player. That's cool.
Right.
Like, and somebody else acknowledged that. And just being part of that, because it was big. I think it was like 24 of us. And it was literally 24 of like the best players in the region, and getting like every match was just a really fun, interesting game to play through because there was no slouches. Like it was no, like every decision you were like thinking through or whatever. I think I just finished like middle of the pack. I was probably like, I think like 10th or 11th or something. So I didn't even win anything for it, but it was just cool to just have that be a thing that, an organizer was willing to take that type of consideration and make a thing, a to do out of it, on their dime, effectively. There was no extra money because it was all invite, but just as a reward for going to all their events and putting in all that time, I thought that was pretty cool. And we don't have invitations really of any kind anymore for the most part. So like, I think that's probably why that one stands out a little bit.
Nice. Ruben?
Yeah, there's a number of ways to answer this question of, competitively, what's my best memory? Being recognized as a content creator, what's my best memory? Yeah. Founding friendships or maintaining friendships, what's your best memory? I'm having a hard time deciding how I want to answer this question. So I will choose one of them. And it is a moment that came out of hardship. Because at the time, I didn't look at it as this is one of my best memories of Magic. But looking back on it, it has since become one of my best memories in Magic, and Evan was there. So I went to Worlds in New York in 2007, and it was the largest ice storm that New York City had seen in something like 50 or 100 years. And the person that we were going to be staying with did not end up making it to New York, and also lost their cell phone in a snowbank trying to get to New York. So not only did we not have a place to stay, we didn't have a way to communicate with the person who we were going to be staying with. So what ended up happening is we arrive at neutral ground in Manhattan and are just there for hours. And there's a bunch of Magic players there, who like braved the snowstorm and are from all over the country, mostly from New York, but from all over the country. And me and my friend Jorts, Brian Toon, and Evan, and a bunch of other folks who I came from Ohio with, and some other folks are around. And we're just playing a draft, I think, and we hear some voices from the front counter asking if they have any cards for sale of like specific cards. And we're like listening in and being like, we have some of those cards. I'll go tell them that we have those cards. I walk up, it's Bob Marr and David Williams. And they were like, hey, do you have any of these cards? And it was like Spine Rock Knolls and Bogarden Hellkites. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, I don't know why you want those, but we have those. And of course, this was the Spine Rock Knoll Dragonstorm weekend where Chapin and Nassif had their famous semifinal match, and Uri Peleg ended up winning that Worlds. But me and my friend Jorts lent Bogarden Hellkites and Dragonstorms and Spine Rock Knolls and all of these other weirdo cards that no one else had to Dave Williams and Bob Marr, among others, on their team for the weekend. And that's how I met those two guys. And that whole weekend was kind of a blur. I spent 3 of the 4 nights in the basement of Neutral Ground, and just like money drafted Lorwyn all weekend and got no sleep and was ragged and disheveled, and I did not feel good. And on my way home, I felt like this was such a horrifically bad mistake for me to have gone. It was such a disaster. And then I got home and I was like, oh, this is a formative memory. This is one of those core memories from Inside Out. So I think that is what I will pick as my best Magic memory.
Nice. Yeah, that was, and it, tangentially, as I recall this, I'm pretty sure it was Worlds, was the one that Ken Nagel, former R&D now, but Ken Nagel at the time had literally paid for my plane ticket to get up there because I couldn't afford it at the time.
Wow.
So, quite the tales from that event, let me tell you. Moving on here, real quickly to some splash damage. I thought this was just kind of messed up. You want to talk about some vulture capitalism? You want to talk about like the way that Toys R Us died was to saddle it with infinite debt and say good luck. That's what just happened to Asmodee. Asmodee is a game publishing company that publishes some of the biggest stuff that you've heard of. Star Wars Unlimited, we were talking about earlier. They published that game amongst the myriad of other stuff, as well as Star Wars stuff like X-Wing and whatnot, miniatures games and stuff, and board games all over the place. They have tons of cool stuff. And they were bought by the Embracer Group years ago. And the Embracer Group kind of, absorbed them into the company. Cool. And then they said, oh, I've got 900 million pounds of debt, euro, London pounds. And what we're going to do is we're going to borrow 900 mil, and then we're going to split the company into 3, and then we're going to give that debt to Asmodee, and then cut ties with Asmodee. And so these other 2 companies get off scot-free, and you hand this one company a $900 million debt and say good luck. And if you want to see a company die, you saddle it with infinite debt, because they have to make interest payments and payments on the loan. And maybe there's balloon payments involved. God knows what contract stuff they put in there. But as a, capitalism tool, it just broke my heart to see them take something, absorb it, recognize the value. And because all of those loans, all of the collateral stuff is Asmodee stuff. That's how that works. So they say, okay, it's all Asmodee things. Then we split the company. All the loan cares about is that. See you guys later. And all of their debts are paid. And Asmodee gets to fit the bill.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal. This can't be legal. And if it is, then I don't like the system.
It is.
Yeah, so I don't like the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sadly, this is something people have been questioning for a while on the business side of the industry, just because of how they were operating and some of the rules they put in place, and how they were trying to market stuff. And they change a lot of rules constantly on like how to order things and what's a core item you need to carry or not carry to get certain discounts. And
man, I remember that.
A lot of people had a lot of questions about stuff going on, and this was one of the things that was speculated, not to like that number of debt, but that no, something might be going on behind the scenes and whatever. And then this came out and a lot of people went, there's the shoe we were waiting to drop. Right. Like that makes a lot of sense.
There was a joke told at the DICE Awards about Embracer Group and how they were being kind of, and everyone in the room like oohed at the joke. They were like, there are two things that every video game manufacturer fears. One was like people online are mad, and number two is that Embracer Group is interested in buying your company. And everyone in the room went ooh, and then they cut to the Embracer Group people at the award show. I mean, that's what has happened, right? Joke isn't funny when joke isn't joke.
Yeah, they bought up a lot of. There was probably about a 7-ish year stretch where they were buying a lot of properties.
Yeah,
a lot of companies outright that owned a lot of different things under each one of them.
Yeah. So, they got a little crazy there for a while, and it sucks when you see this. Like, this could be the part of Asmodee declares bankruptcy and has issues of moving its IP and its stuff around. Like, I don't want that to happen. I like their games. Their games are cool beyond weird rules and things like Power Dragon was noting that they have sometimes with carrying their titles, but whatever. Either way, that was tough.
So a lot of them Star Wars cards.
so many of them. And they are, for what it's worth, they're moving. Them Star Wars cards be hot. Let's move on here. Let's turn the corner here to the finisher. Thanks everyone, of course, for all of your bits, your subs, and any monies you can send our way is appreciated. That said, last year on 420, the daily deals on Arena included a bunch of cards that were about blazing. Well, this year also had a theme, apparently. All of the deals were about censorship, like buy your silence and revoke privileges. Reddit and Twitter users took a while to note this tongue-in-cheek jest. So tell me, what other counterculture holidays should be celebrated by the Arena deals, Ruben?
Well, I'm an avid celebrator of Pi Day every March 14th, aka 3.14. So I'm hoping for some bacon to a pie, gallant pie wielder, and of course, everyone's favorite, piety.
So what you did there, Power Dragon?
May the 4th is about 2 weeks away, and may the 4th be with you when you celebrate on Arena. But Arena's going to celebrate with some Force of Negation, probably Ben Aki Hermit, and the classic Star Wars legend, Jedi Ojanin.
Very nice, very nice. Well, with all of the power couples in Magic, like the triumphant return of Jace and Vraska, and everyone's favorite, Chandra and Nissa, I'm hoping for some dual Planeswalker-themed deals on June 9th. I'm not going to explain this punchline any further.
Hopefully everyone's on board. Everyone got that one.
You have to look that one up.
June 9th. What number is what number is June, Evan?
Stop it with your numbers.
Nope.
Number jokes.
Just leave it alone.
See what we did?
Number
jokes. We did it. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, that ends another live episode of Magic Mike. Thanks for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. Thank you, Power Dragon.
Hey, it's always good to be here. I got to get back to the mines and make more Arena content.
There you go. Thank you, Ruben.
Yeah, get back in there. Go to work. Hey, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time.
There you go. We'll move on here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com. Use the code Magic Mics at checkout. Please and thank you. Our co-sponsor, Mana Traders, my co-host, Power Dragon, and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us on our exclusive member Discord, live on twitch.tv at Magic Mics, live or taped on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, and join our TikTok at Magic Mics Cast, or join us here next week. Same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.